What's up, guys? In today's video we got some new arrows and we're going to be doing some bear shaft tuning. Stick with me, let's see how it turns out. What a roller coaster of a season it has been. She came in downwind, it actually winded me. So like I said, today we are doing some bear shaft tuning, and I'm switching up my arrow setup a little bit this year. I typically run 100 grains in the front in the form of a Schwacker. And to be honest, the Schwackers really haven't let me down. They've been a good head. They fly good. They fly just like a field point. But when I was listening to all this hype, and yes, I'm drinking the Kool-Aid about the adult arrows here, but when I was watching a lot of the videos and doing a lot of research, something that really resonated with me was when you make a bad shot, or even a good shot, a sharp cut-on contact broadhead, it doesn't hit the deer in the same way that an expandable broadhead does. And when I was watching these videos and hearing that, it brought back a couple of hunts that I had when I was first starting out bow hunting, and I was using a cut-on contact head, and I did have some bad shots on deer where those deer literally acted like they hadn't been hit. I mean, they'd flinch and they'd run about 20 yards, but then they'd just start looking around for what happened, and then they would only walk a short distance, lay down, and die. And it was super easy tracking. And every clip, because I've been self-filming for a little while now, every clip of every deer that I've shot with an expandable, they run as fast as they can, as hard as they can, until they die. So if there's a better way to do that, in this case that's adult arrows, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to play around with that this year and see if I like the results. So what I've got here is some Easton arrows that I got from the local shop here in town. They're actually called First Light Outfitters. And I'm going to be running the range free test kit from Ethics. So we're going to be sending 200, 225, 250, 275, and 300 grain field points downrange. And what I've got here is a box for, I don't even know what it's for, but it's a big box and it opens like this. So the back of it is being propped open. Cut out a little section of the cardboard and put some paper there that we're going to be sending arrows through. So I'm going to stop talking. I'm going to get some field points on the front of this and let's see what happens. All right, so what we're using for this test, I got a Matthews Triax. I got a black gold sight. I think that's what it's called. It's been so long since I bought it. Let's see what this does. This is 200 grains. Oh my gosh. Well, that was not good. Good night. And you can see the arrow kind of kicks sideways into the target too. That's bad enough that I may have to go back to the bow shop and see if I have any cam lean or anything like that. But we're going to run through the rest of the broadheads just to be safe here. So that was 200. Moving on to 225. All right, I'm out here for morning 2, fixing to do a little bit more tuning. So on day 1, I came out here with some of the Ethics field points for the test kit and some 300 spline arrows, and I sent a few down range, and I was not happy with the results. Arrows seemed to be kicking left, and even after they went through the paper, they were still sticking in the target, kind of canted. So I was talking with Troy, aka the Ranch Fairy, and I'll link his channel in the description below and in the video. And I was telling him that I thought that maybe the spline was too low, or that maybe my center for my bow could be slightly off, and he agreed. So he told me to try a 250 spline arrow. Well, I couldn't find that, so I got a 200. And we're going to see what this does. Hopefully it's not too much, but it was the closest I could get. I did like the price on these, though. They were only like $4 a piece. But today I figured I would start by doing a couple things. Number one, I'm going to take my original arrow, my 340, and I'm going to bare shaft it with a 100 grain broadhead and send it downrange, because I sent one of those down last time, but I had the fletchings on, and I think the fletchings corrected it, and it had a slight kick, but it wasn't bad. It actually looked pretty decent. But I think if I knock the fletchings off there, I'm going to get a lot better idea about how far the bow is off. And I'm also going to send one of these down with probably a 200, one of the 200 splines, and we're just going to start from there and kind of tinker with the bow as we go. The first thing I'll probably tinker with is moving my rest, because if those arrows aren't coming out of the bow completely straight, that's probably why. If I still need to do a little bit of adjusting past that, I may play with my poundage, and those are pretty much the only two things I can touch. If I can't get it lined out from there, I may have to go to a pro shop and see about putting the bow back in timing if it's out, or maybe if there's a cam lean or something like that. But that's where we're at. We're going to get after it. First two we're sending is the original arrow with the 100 grain field point 340 spline. Second arrow we're sending is the 200 spline with a 200 grain FX field point. You can see that those arrows are kicked way to the left still. They're coming in left, and then I think when they're hitting the paper, they're kind of correcting, because they're definitely hitting the paper left. And a straight arrow on this target would look like that, so you can see the difference. So I think it's definitely coming out of the bow weird. It did it on the original setup. It isn't just the heavy broadheads that are pushing them that way, so I'm going to have to do some tinkering with the bow. So I finally got these arrows shooting straight, and what I ended up having to do is take my rest and move it as far left as I could. It turns out it was way off, and for a minute I was making little micro adjustments, and I just could not get that arrow to stop kicking left. And I just got mad, and I'm like, well, I'm going to see if I can get it to kick right. And I moved it all the way as far as it would go to the left, and lo and behold, I got an arrow that went in straight. So I'm going to go back to the paper now and see what that looks like. Alright guys, so it's been about 2 hours since the last time, and I stopped trying to film everything because I realized it was going to take a while. But essentially what I ended up doing, besides slipping into slow madness, is I ended up going a half crank down on my poundage, and I was messing around with the 200 spline, the 300 spline, and just to keep things interesting, I had my original 340 spline with the 100 grain field point, and then I messed with every single field point, and I ended up finally, after cranking down my poundage just a little bit, messing with the left and right on my riser, and then messing with the up and down on my riser, because every spline kept doing the same thing. It was kicking left, and when every arrow does the same thing, it's your bow. It's not the arrow or the spline, it's your bow. So it ended up being my wrist, and I ended up with this, which I was super, super happy with. And I'll turn you into the shadows here so you can see it a little bit better. But I ended up with this, and I was super happy with it. I can live with that. But I wanted to try and fine-tune it. I was already here. Messed with the nocks a little bit, adjusted my risers a little bit, and took a pretty big step backwards. So I undid everything that I did there, and I messed with the up and down on my riser just a little bit, and within 3 shots, I was able to get that guy. And that guy was with a 200 grain tip and a 300 spline arrow. And I adjusted my riser slightly up and down, and I've been messing with the knock on it, and it seems to make all the difference. So what I'm going to do now, that I've got everything dialed in, and I believe I can shoot a 225 or a 200, at least I have been able to, is I'm going to give you guys a slow-mo through the paper, and I'm going to give you guys a slow-mo into the target. And let me tell you something, just an observation I've noticed already. There's less of a smack when these heavy arrows hit the target. And I'll show you side by side. I'll shoot my old setup next to my new setup. There is no comparison to the penetration. These arrows with these heavier points and stiffer splines are going like 6 inches farther into this archery target than the other ones. So I'm gonna get that set up and let's shoot. So this one didn't get the penetration that I wanted it to, but it is about an inch farther into the target. Well, probably 2 inches, because that field point sticks out about another inch farther than the 100 grain one. So I got about 2 inches more penetration, but the arrow is actually straighter, where you can see this one kick sideways too. So definitely the heavier splined arrow, and it's actually a heavier arrow too with the 225 field point, is outperforming my 340 with 100 grain. So it's my fault. So I've learned a couple things through this whole process. Most importantly, you need to dedicate a couple of days to this. I thought I was going to come out here within an hour, slap a couple of heavy field points on, get some bullet holes, resight in my bow, and be good. Not the case. It actually took probably somewhere in the ballpark of 3 to 4 hours of total adjusting to get everything exactly where it needed to be. And along the process, I thought I was going to lose my mind. I kept taking a step backwards. There was a lot of mosquitoes out here. It's hot. So it really took some work to get this done, but I think it'll be worth it. And the second thing is, don't go crazy. And Troy does a good job saying this in his videos, but don't go crazy chasing that bullet hole in the paper. That last bullet hole that you guys seen, I had 5 225 grain 300 spline arrows before that looked like they had 3 bullet holes in them instead of 1. I mean, I'm probably 1 out of every 5 is going to perfect bullet hole, and the rest are going to be slightly off, and that's fine as long as you can get them into the paper with a tear that's like 2 or 3 inches going up and down. You're fine. That's all you need. And something else that was a big help to me is I just got about 5 feet in front of the target and shot arrows into the target. And I shot those arrows and made adjustments until the arrows were going in straight. They weren't kicking side to side. They were just going in straight. And that ultimately is the biggest step, I think, that led me to getting the results I got. But my formula, so from the time I got here till now, I shot probably 100, maybe 150 arrows. It's hard to say. I ended up ultimately adjusting my bow down a half crank on each side. I had to adjust the left and right on my riser farther to the left because it was slightly off center like I thought it was initially. I then had to adjust the up and down on my riser, and I had to play with every spline combination and every field point combination until I just found that one after all the stars align, and that's what you got. So it takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of scientific experiments. It takes a lot of trial and error, but it is worth it. Now all I got to do is come back in and sight my bow in to this new setup. I think I'm going to run with a 225, so I'll probably have to have a little bit of a weighted insert and then probably run a 200 grain broadhead. So that's where I'm at. That's the end of this video, guys. If it helped you out, if you liked it, make sure you like the channel, make sure you subscribe to the channel, make sure you drop a comment, especially if you've had frustrations of your own. If you guys want to learn more about this, I'm not an expert. I'm just trying someone else's method. Check out Troy, the Ranch Fairies YouTube page. I'm going to link it right up here. The guy has a ton of videos out there. He makes the stuff seem easy. But if you're wanting to get into it, that's where to go. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you in the next one.